after over 200 players around the National Football League spit on our faces and took a knee during the National Anthem on Sunday following President Donald Trump's common-sense comments regarding the anti-American protesters in the NFL, it seems more than just players decided to get in on the publicity stunt by disrespecting our flag, nation, and her people during the Lions vs. Falcons game in the cesspool that is Detroit, Michigan. Although local recording artist Rico Lavelle was given what will probably turn out to be the greatest honor of his measly insignificant little life, just like the ungrateful ball tossers, he chose to disrespect the nation that provides his wealth. Lavelle not only kneeled for the national anthem, he also raised a black power fist after the song's ending. And look who was right next to him. Little kids. What an example. He may as well have just said, "Look, my little brothers, it's okay if you grow up to be anti-white, racist, black supremacists." Idiotic. Do you suppose he made that gesture to show solidarity with all those young black men killing each other in the slums of Detroit? Probably not, because we all know it's okay for blacks to kill blacks or for blacks to kill whites or Hispanics. Wouldn't you love to see these ungrateful rich spoiled bastards, including this third-rate singer, go to the Africa and try to make a buck there? These uneducated fools in the NFL make on average $2.2 million a year, that's more than most of us will see during our entire lifetimes, but they claim oppression. Town Hall reports. Detroit was once one of the world's great cities. It was the fourth largest metropolis in America, jobs were plentiful because of the auto industry, and Motown even kept it on the cutting edge musically. Unfortunately, from 1962 until the present day, the mayor of Detroit has been a Democrat. The result? Detroit's population has dropped from 1.8 million to just over 700,000, the unemployment rate is over 50% if you count the people who've given up on finding jobs, property values have dropped so much you can buy homes in the crime-ridden city for $500, and Detroit has gone bankrupt. How did Democrats kill one of the most prosperous cities in America? With the same sort of unfettered liberalism that Democrats like Barack Obama, Harry Reid, and Nancy Pelosi want to foist on the rest of the nation. 1. Unions crippled the auto industry. The big three automakers could afford unions when they practically had a monopoly on auto production in the United States. However, once they started facing real competition from overseas, the unions made them less and less competitive. The unions forced the companies to pay out more than market value for their workers, put stifling work rules in place that made flexibility and innovation difficult, and created generous pension plans that are proving to be unsustainable. This wouldn't have been possible without a symbiotic relationship between the unions and the Democrats in government who tied the hands of the big three automakers and simply wouldn't allow them to get rid of the unions that were slowly strangling them to death. Eventually, because of the unions, the big three automakers had to deal with significantly larger costs per car than their overseas competitors, and they took it out of the only place they could, the cars. As the quality of their products dropped, their competitors took an ever larger share of their market, and there were fewer jobs to go around. If you want to know why the Motor City is up on cinder blocks in Michigan's front yard, this is where it started. 2. White citizens were demonized until they left. Detroit was a heavily segregated city, and in 1967, there were black riots. After that, white flight to the suburbs began. This was dramatically exacerbated when Coleman Young became Detroit's first black mayor in 1972. Young was cut from the same cloth as men like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, but unlike the two of them, he actually had power. Young systematically drove white government employees out of their jobs so they could be replaced by blacks, was hostile to the white suburbs, and was generally perceived as anti-white. Naturally, a lot of white people just left, which reduced the population and significantly cut into the tax base. Today, Detroit is a 7.9% white city, and if he were alive and kicking, that would probably suit Coleman Young just fine. 3. Out-of-control crime helped drive much of the black middle class out of the city. Ever heard of Devil's Night? It's the night before Halloween, and in Detroit, fires are set all over the city. Combine the sort of criminal mentality that produces an unofficial holiday like that with a sky-high unemployment rate and draconian laws designed to make it difficult for law-abiding citizens to arm themselves, and it's not a surprise that crime is a problem in Detroit. However, the issue goes much deeper than that. In case you haven't noticed, in a conflict between a cop and a criminal, the hearts of liberals almost always seem to bleed for the thug. Combine that with the liberal tendency, when money gets tight, to cut essential programs instead of their perks and the goodies they hand out to their supporters, and you end up with a police department that is both dramatically underfunded and completely incompetent. How bad has it gotten? The size of the police force in Detroit has been cut by about 40% over the past decade. It takes the police an average of 58 minutes to respond to a call, and the police solve less than 10% of the crimes that are committed in Detroit. 4. Reckless government spending bankrupted the city. Detroit's tax base has been plunging like an anvil dropped into the Marianas Trench, and so, in true liberal fashion, liberals have raised taxes to make up for it instead of cutting spending. The city's per capita tax burden is the highest in Michigan. Detroit has the country's highest property taxes on homes, the top commercial property tax, and the second highest industrial property tax. Unfortunately for Detroit, you can't get blood from a stone. As jobs and wealth fled the city, there was simply less cash available for big government programs, pensions, and the incredibly generous, but almost completely unfunded union health care program. It's fantastic that the city paid 80% to 100% of retirees' medical costs, but 99.6% of those costs were unfunded. As Obamacare supporters should have learned by now, it's a lot easier for politicians to make big promises about what they're going to give you than it is to back them up in the real world. 5. The government is completely incompetent. Ever notice that the bigger government seems to get, the less it does anything well? Citizens of Detroit could tell you all about that. The school system is horrible, which explains why a staggering 47% of the population is illiterate. In addition, 40% of the street lights don't work. Only about 1/3 of the ambulances are running, and 2/3 of the parks have been closed since 2008. Just to give you an idea of its priorities, an independent report in 2012 suggested the city fire 80% of the water and sewage department, including a horseshoer that it has on staff even though it has no horses. How did the union respond to that report? They don't have enough people as it is right now. They are just dreaming to think they can operate that plant with less. Detroit may not have enough police, ambulances, or competent teachers, but if you ever need a horseshoe in the Motor City, they've got you covered. What really surprises me the most out of this disgusting episode is that although most everyone I know is boycotting the NFL, NBA, and now the MLB, some people are still watching these overpaid hacks toss a ball. People who I know don't agree with this disrespect but just can't seem to help themselves. Is the need to watch a ball being thrown by a bunch of anti-American, spoiled rich millionaires really that important that it takes precedence over the disrespect being given to our nation, her flag, and all of us who hold her dear? Are we really that weak as a society? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe to my channel.